What's up guys, it's Extra Troy, and today I wanted to talk to y'all about my journey to 1800 and kind of the way I went about getting there and the tools, the steps, and everything that I looked at to be able to hit this rating. In this video, I kind of just want to help everyone who's kind of like 1500 or lower, or even, anyone at my level, just try to give my own perspective, kind of give them what I did and see if maybe that could help them. Because I wouldn't consider the fact that I'm 1800 to be super impactful. I know it's, a decently high rating, but I also don't think, personally speaking, I've tried too much to get there. Like, I'm not sitting here studying every single day. I'm not sitting here, researching games, reading books, looking at Grandmaster games, doing this, doing that, keeping up to date with this thing and that thing. Like, I play for fun, and sometimes every now and then maybe I'll look at an opening and maybe try to memorize some stuff, but other than that, I'm not really sitting here doing super crazy things. So I kind of just wanted to give y'all kind of my foundation and my base level to try and help people to be a bit more solid of a player, because that's what I would consider myself. I wouldn't say that I'm super tactical, super theoretical, super positional, super this, that, and the other thing. I think I'm just a solid player. And so, I just kind of wanted to show y'all what that looks like, and without any further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so let's go ahead and hop into it. So, the first thing, this is obviously my chess.com profile. I do have an OTB rating of 1554 rapid and 1407 blitz. I don't have a classical rating or anything, but this is my rapid rating. Peak is 1811. I haven't played a lot in the past couple weeks or so. I've just been kind of busy with things, but so we're mainly going to be talking about rapid here. This can also be applied to blitz. I'm a little bit lower in blitz, but still relatively strong, right? But obviously not as strong as rapid. So the first thing, besides just getting acquainted with the game and playing it and kind of just understanding how the pieces move and the fundamentals and stuff like that, the first thing that I did was start looking at different openings. Now, there's plenty of different ways you can do this. There's plenty of YouTube videos, plenty of books, plenty of guides, and you can maybe talk to some people at your own level and maybe like Discord or get a coach or something. But the thing that I did for the longest time was look at the chess.com opening videos. Now, all of these are relatively like 20 to 30 minutes long, and there's a decent amount of them, and they cover pretty much all of the basic openings that you'll pretty much always see. Like, I'm just scrolling through some of these right now, and this is like 90% of what you would need. And so I would sit there just kind of every night, just watch one or two of these videos, kind of understand like what the point of some of these openings were, try and get the general ideas down, try and figure out where the pieces go, what the general plans are. But you don't have to sit there and necessarily memorize, like 20, 30 moves of just random theory, right? And so I thought this was a pretty decent way to kind of start off, and it definitely helps you get comfortable approaching a position. And this was kind of the first thing that I did in terms of just trying to learn things, was just looking at these videos. Secondly, I started to get a bit more in depth, and this is Gotham Chess's website, Chessly, and here he has some courses where you can kind of go through a bunch of lines and kind of understand some basic attacks and stuff like that. And so I've looked at two of them, the Ruy Lopez and the Alapin, and those are some of my best openings because of these types of courses. Now, the way that I learn the best is kind of just building on repetition. So if you can imagine, if you're trying to count, it'd be like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're just starting over but building, starting over but building. And so it kind of repeats that repetition, so it's a bit easier to memorize. Now, the reason why I'm good with these openings isn't just because I know 20 to 30 lines of theory, but it's because I understand like where the pieces are supposed to go and what the plans are and how I'm supposed to attack, right? But besides these types of just courses and everything, sometimes I'll sit here and play puzzles. I'm about like 1900 in terms of like puzzle rating, but I mean, who really cares? And puzzles are definitely a good way to, understand common patterns and kind of understand, different ideas and everything. But at the end of the day, it's also not the end all be all, and there's plenty of things that you can do besides puzzles to kind of study. But Besides that, that's pretty much it. Like I said, I don't really sit here and just grind a bunch every day. Sometimes I'll play a bunch of games in like the chess.com Discord server, and you can see some of them here just up against, various levels of player. But for the main part, I just try and play for fun, and that's gotten me pretty decently far. Now, I will say, also playing in person over the board definitely helps. It's very good having the pieces in front of you, and over the board chess really helps you force learn your calculation, just because online, of course, it's pretty easy. You can just sit here, be in any position, draw a bunch of arrows, and you'd be like, okay, and it's very easy to sit there and visualize. But whenever you're playing over the board, you have to do that all in your head, and it really forces you to like be a lot better, and forces you to understand trying to find the best moves, not only for yourself, but also for your opponent. And so yeah, that's pretty much all that I've done besides just playing games. I actually don't have that many games played. I only have about 3,700. There are some people in my friends list, like this guy, for example. He's 2,500, and he has like 30,000 games played, right? So it's not really based off of how much you play. It's just kind of like the quality of it. Now, of course, I'm still not the strongest player in the world, but, I'm decently high up there. We can also take a look at one of these other games, like this one right here, for example, and this can kind of show you the general idea of how to go about games at my level. So this was my most recent rapid game that I played. Unfortunately, chess.com paired me with the 1700, but considering how I'm low 1800, it makes sense. But we can go ahead and look at the game review here. This was a Sicilian defense, Alapin. This is what I like to play against the Sicilian. There's of course many other options. Let's go into the analysis. You can play the open, of course. There's also the closed. There's the Smith Mora. But the main thing that I like to play is just the Alapin. Sometimes I've experimented with the Smith Mora, and there's a lot of fun like attacking lines that you can try and develop, but I feel like the one that I have the highest chances with is the Alapin. So they play d6, which is one of the moves. It's not one of the most forcing moves. In the Alapin, usually the main responses are d5 or knight f6, and both of those put the most pressure on, but there's nothing wrong with d6. I play d4, just continue, takes, and then here they play knight f6. Now, once again, there's a myriad of options. The computer still wants you to play d5, wasting a tempo, but you're at least fighting back for some space. There's also knight f6, there's also g6. There's plenty of different moves here, but my opponent goes knight f6, which makes a lot of sense. I develop my knight. He pushes this pawn, which I don't think necessarily is the best idea. Obviously, he's just trying to pull his bishop out and castle, but both of his bishops here are a bit passive, and I definitely feel like, maybe you could develop this here, or, play something like this. Yeah, that's what the engine is recommending, is something like this. There's also g6 and a6, just trying to prevent any check here, but this is acceptable. It's a bit more passive. Now, this isn't the best move, and I knew it wasn't the best move whenever I played it, just because, I'm not really developing any pieces, but I feel like if I can claim a lot of space in the center, then why not, Okay, they play a6, that makes a lot of sense. They obviously don't want to allow anything on this diagonal, and it also supports a potential pawn push and expansion over here on the queen side. I develop my knight, they push their pawn, which is, valid. I develop my bishop, getting ready to castle. They fianchettoed their bishop, which makes a lot of sense because they played e6. This bishop isn't ever really going to have any activity here, so if they put the bishop on b7, well, then it's eyeing kind of that main diagonal of my position. I play a3 just because I don't really want them to push this pawn. There is kind of an idea here, for example, like if I just like castle, they could probably maybe kick my knight, and then I would have to move, and then they would probably take my pawn. Queen b3 is also a strong idea, kind of x-raying, and so if they take, I take. I don't really want to get into that, so I just play a3 before anything. They develop their knight, I castle, they develop their bishop. I go h3 just to stop any kind of knight g4 ideas, also any potential, like pawn pushes ideas. My main worry was like if I were to go here, there might be some like idea here to try and trade this off. It's not the best, but I just didn't want to allow any of that. So I play h3, they castle. I go queen e1, trying to put my queen along this diagonal here. and maybe start some kind of kingside attack. They move their queen, which is a bit risky because if I'm ever able to put a rook here on c1, well, it's directly on this open file, and usually you don't want the queen to be in charge of all that. So I develop my bishop, of course, using this idea, and they strike in the center with e5. Now, I feel like e5 was a bit premature, and the engine is recommending here that you kind of develop your rooks, or to go knight b6, which is, you know, a decent move to try and control some of the center, but e5 is not necessarily the best. Also, it's saying queen d8 too is pretty decent, just trying to get out of the way, which is kind of funny, you know, you develop and you just go back. But e5 is a bit premature in my opinion, and this is where you can kind of see the idea of f4 coming in, just because it really helps solidify the center. Because I played queen e1, I still wanted to try and have some type of like kingside attack here, so I decided to take once and then close down the center. And now this probably isn't the best. The computer wants rook c1, which is, you know, logical, just putting pressure on the pin, developing the rook, there's nothing wrong. But the second top move is d5, which is what I played. And basically my idea is like, okay, well, you have all your pieces over here, right? But they can't necessarily get into these squares super easily and try to protect your king. So if I'm ever able to play, I don't know, like queen h4 or something like queen g3, get my knight in the game, you know, get the rooks open, this bishop is really good. It's very hard for black to try and rally the defenses to try and come back. So the opponent goes bishop c5, which makes a lot of sense. You just want to trade off the dark square bishop because it's pinned to my king. And so I just develop my rook here. They take, I take. And then they go queen b6, which is a bit of a mistake because it hangs a pawn. So I take, and then take. And so they play rook e8, which is valid, you know, just asking my knight where it's going. I play knight c6. The computer wants me just to go back, but I feel like, you know, maybe just being a bit more active would have been a bit better. And then they play this, which I feel like is a bit of a mistake here. The computer also agrees, just because I can take and then ruin the pawn structure. And then computer wants knight a5, which is a fork of course, both of these. But I didn't find that. I just pushed this pawn. And my idea is like, if they take, well, then I can take back, or I can just, you know, maybe try and promote. Because in this position, I'm starting to kind of flirt with the idea of pushing my pawns up the board to maybe promote something. And so I push, that way it kind of influences that. That was a bit of a mistake though, after a move like rook c8. And basically the idea is they just want to take and then just win the pawn back, right? Or there's also something like this. And so rook e8 was a bit of a mistake just because knight a5 is still there, hitting both of these. They can't take here. And even if they take here in the center, well, it's not super great just because one, you know, it hangs a bishop, right? So you have to do something about this. But I mean, do you really want to play something like rook here? Because I mean, now knight takes c4 here, yeah, knight takes e5, rook c to e1, and you're just pinning the knight. Okay, that makes sense, yeah. There's a lot of potency after this knight a5 move, but I wasn't necessarily looking at that, but now that it's shown to me, it makes sense. But I go rook e1, and they miss the idea. So they trade off, and of course, this whole idea of, you know, just taking and winning back your pawn makes a lot of sense, but now this passed c pawn is very strong, and it's actually very hard to try and get rid of it, because if you go something like here, well, I always have some knight d5 ideas, right? Because you can't go here, because one, that just walks directly into this, and if you go here, well then, you know, I'm taking your knight, right? And even if you takes, maybe you go something like here, then I can just develop, and then eventually my rooks are getting in. And then if they try to go the other way, well, there's still this idea, and you can't double up, you can't really move this knight back to try and attack the pawn, and so this passed pawn is now very much a problem. Also, something like rook a7 doesn't work, just because one, I can just take and promote with back rank mate. So this pawn is a very strong asset now, and pretty much no matter what they do, I'm still going to try and rally around it. So I trade rooks, and then I put my knight in the center, just because it's almost forcing this rook to go back here. But if I'm ever to get like some knight b6 ideas, it'll really help dislodge. After I jump my knight in the center, they take this pawn, which is obviously a mistake because now I get knight b6, further reinforcing the development of this pawn. They push, and here I had kind of a concern. I was kind of seeing a ghost here. I was worried that if I were just to promote and everything, then this could be potentially getting in with something like knight d3 and then c2, and then all of a sudden I'm the one who can't stop the promotion. And so instead I just decide to block, just attack the pawn. Why not? They go here, which is obviously a mistake. I mean, the idea is pretty simple, that they just want to take the knight and then just take the pawn. Turns out, one, I can still technically promote, and then now I'm just up a rook. Or, and this is what I did in the game, I can just take the knight and then take the pawn, and then now there's basically zero chance of black winning this game, and then it's kind of all just about conversion. So I start bringing my king, they start pushing pawns, I kind of push mine to help stop them. They give me a check, but it doesn't really do much. They have this pin here of both my pieces, but if I'm ever able to make contact with one of them, then it's not ever really an issue. So I come back to guard the knight, they give me a check, I block, they move their king up, and then now you can really start to feel the advantage for black kind of not really being there. They push these pawns, I just kind of trade them off, I give a check, and then now I'm gonna start going for this a6 pawn just to finish the game. So obviously rook a4, trying to attack. This is a strong move, not only guarding the pawn but also pinning my knight, and so I give a check, and then I start rotating over, that way I can hit the rook. Another plus side of this check is that whenever the king moves, it is now a lot further away from my pawn than I am from their pawn. So if I'm ever able to trade off his rook here and just kind of get my way over there, I'm going to have a lot easier time promoting my pawn than he is his. And of course I can always sack my knight for this pawn because I'm still just straight up winning. So he tries to push, I take, and then he comes up with this very interesting idea of rook b5. Now the idea is pretty simple. I take, they take, and then my knight is hanging, so I have to move my knight, but there might be some potential like counterplay here, right? But I don't believe it, so I give a check, and obviously it's just massively winning. The engine says it's fine because, obviously you're just up. But, we're kind of low on time at this point. We both have about a minute left. So I'm like, okay, let me give a check. I'll go ahead and take the rook here, and then I'm just going to go here. Yes, I hung my knight, but now that it's only my pawn on the board, and this is just completely winning, there's absolutely nothing he can do to stop the promotion. We have a bit low of a time situation, but I'm just scooting closer, and here he times out. There was only one big mistake in this game, which was rook e1, but he didn't see it and capitalize on it, and then from there I was pretty much winning, and then I think he was kind of going in the wrong direction, trying to trade off these bishops here, just because it allowed my pawns in the center, and of course my pieces also supporting them, to kind of just march up the board and take control of the game. And that's honestly why I like the Alapin a lot, is just because white is in control of majority of the play, pretty much no matter what black does. Like, in all of these Sicilian type structures, you're usually always going to play d4 at some point, at least you play the closed Sicilian. But the Alapin is a very controlled type of Sicilian where there's not a lot of crazy things happening, and that's honestly my type of game. But yeah, so that's what a game at my level kind of looks like, and you can kind of see a lot of the thought processes and moves that are still being missed, but also being developed, right? Because like I said, I understand the idea once I'm shown it, but it's the ability to find that within a game that's hard. Now, is that separating me from 1900 from 2000? Probably yeah, but at the end of the day, it's just one of those things that just comes with time, a bit more practice, a bit more studying, right? So it's not the end of the world, and it's not like an uphill battle to be able to get to 1800 to 2000 to these higher elo ranges. It's just something that you have to put a little bit of time into, yeah, as with anything, but I don't want it to be something that people think is just so incredibly impossible. Like, if I'm picking up the game of chess tomorrow, right, is it going to take me 5 years to get to 2000 or 10 years to get to 1500, right? At the end of the day, I hope you enjoyed. I hope that you learned something, and yeah, peace.